Inside BBI with John and Eric begins now.
First for the first and 13 to neighbors, 7 before that. Here's one again by Darkness. He's going to take it into Zan for Burns, knocks the ball free, and the Giants are going to score on defense.
All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, I'm giving a little bit of our Inside BBI shirt that I bought, but it's also celebrating the Olympics a little bit. Go USA individuals and or team. Have fun with that. Yeah, something a little different. But you've got the red blue Giants on as well, so we're supporting.
I have to. It's freezing in my basement, so I had to have a sweatshirt. So I didn't wear my Inside BBI stuff because it's all like summer stuff. So I've got to get some. I got to get some winter wear. So it's freezing down here. Anyways,
nice. Yeah. It's warming up slightly here. I'm kind of happy about it. But then I'm going on a little vacation next week, Wednesday through Sunday. I'll be down in the Fort Myers, Sanibel area of Florida. So I'm gonna warm up. My wife and I got married on Sanibel Island back in 2016. So we're just going to kind of go back down there before. We got a lot of stuff going on. Some big medical stuff with my mother-in-law that my wife's going to be spending a lot of time with her as that comes up. So we want to get away for a few days. That being said, we got a lot of football stuff, but I'm going to answer a couple of questions. Someone sent me a question and asked me, they saw another picture, saw me update some. So where am I at? I started at 206.9 pounds when I started my workout routine. This is day 1 of week 6. I'm 192.7 right now. The next big one is to get under 190. The target is 170. So I'll keep you updated as going on. But boom, here we go. Moving on. Let's talk about football, Eric. I thought we would just be recapping some of the stuff from earlier, but we've got some news that just came about.
Yeah, they have an offensive line coach. No, there was nobody's radar, and I'm sure lots of people are freaking out about because they've never heard of him. And so, again, my same message it's been all along: trust John Harbaugh in this because that's why we hired the guy. So I'm seeing a lot of backsliding now with Giants fans. I got into it with some turd on X this week.
Nice.
Who's I have to sometimes look at the timelines of the people I'm arguing with just to see who I'm arguing with. And it was like, you can tell a lot about a person by looking at their timeline. Let's just put it that way. And at the top of his thing was fire Joe Shane and fire John Harbaugh. That was the top of his thing. So I'm like, and it wasn't just like his bio. It was like the picture he picked, like at the top of his thing. It was like fire John Harbaugh. I'm like, okay, so we've already decided John Harbaugh's not going to work out. And I'm like, anyways, that's the state of the New York Giants fan base. Sometimes is like
he hasn't won a game yet, Eric. I mean, we signed on for wins, right? Oh wait, it probably won't wait for the season to start for that to happen. Yeah, it's to get upset over guys you don't know anything about. I think it's kind of funny because if you're only talking about the people that you actually heard of, then really you don't know shit about anything, right? Because someone brought up Stoutland, and it was in BVI, Big Blue Interactive, and they were like, "Oh, well, he's not Stoutland, but I guess." And I'm thinking, okay, let's back off Stoutland for number one, because here's the thing: when you step down from a job, when you're under contract, you can't just go and sign with somebody else in the NFL. That team still has your rights while they're paying you. Right. So it's not like the Giants just said, "Oh, Stoutland, we tried and we couldn't get him, so we'll just take this other guy." He's not available. He's not. The Giants would have to give something up to get him, and we have no idea if this other person wasn't in the mix all along, and he was just waiting to see what was going to happen with his job in Cleveland because he's under contract in Cleveland until either A, it expired, or B, if they change regimes, they've told the assistants, we're not keeping you. I'm assuming he became free at that point now that Monken's come on board.
Yeah, one of the great issues when you are looking to put together a coaching staff is the coaches have to be available. And a lot of the coaches that are available got fired. So people are automatically going to be like, well, he got fired. He can't be good. Well, he might not be good. He might be good. He might be great. He might suck. We don't know, but he has to be available. So you're limited by who's available. You brought this up a little bit. We couldn't get into it because we had Gary Myers on and we had to spend the bulk of our time with Gary and we didn't have a lot of extra time. But you brought up a point that I really wanted to elaborate on, and that was Todd Monken. Now, people are lamenting, as I am, because I wanted Todd Monken, that we didn't get Todd Monken. But again, a lot of people have to realize, number one, and I still believe this, most people have never heard of Todd Monken before. I mean, Giants fans had never heard of Todd Monken before this process began. And Todd Monken was fired from the Ravens. They got rid of him because their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, doesn't like Todd Monken. And they wanted to get rid of him. And one of the reasons that John Harbaugh became available, it may not be the reason, as Gary Myers was saying, but one of the reasons Harbaugh was available is he was standing by Monken. So
right.
Monken wasn't like this guy in Baltimore that everybody was like, oh my God, we got to keep him. A bulk of their fan base and their starting quarterback were like, get rid of the dude. But we want, so another man's trash isn't,
one man's trash is another man's treasure. Yes, exactly.
So I mean, again, so everybody has their warts, and we'll get into Naggie again because this is crazy, the reaction about Naggie, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same with the offensive line coach. Look, the big question is, and it's a legitimate question, would the Giants have been better off keeping Brasillo here rather than going with their new coach who is, help me out, John. Can't even know. Bloomgren, who was the offensive line coach for Cleveland Browns for 1 year last year on a offensive line devoid of talent. Before that, he was a longtime head coach at Rice. And then he was a longtime offensive line coach and offensive coordinator and associate head coach at Stanford, where he had a lot of great offensive linemen, by the way, in that program. I was reading the Stanford write-up on him, which is extensive, and how many offensive linemen he went through. We don't know if he's going to be any good or not. But again, he was on Gary Myers' show last week, and he told Gary Myers, he said, two of my most important coaching hires is going to be the offensive line and the quarterback coach. He knows this, and his history is of putting together darn good staffs. Again, we have to back up a little bit. Why was everybody trying to get John Harbaugh? Every single team that had a head coaching vacancy, he was their number one guy, and the Giants got him. He is the guy that everybody wanted, and you and I from the very beginning were like, oh, please, let us don't screw this up. Get John Harbaugh. He wants to come.
Absolutely. Yep.
So he comes here. We got him. And one of the reasons he's in high demand, it's not just because he won 180 regular season games. It's not just because his teams continually made the play. Was it 12 of 17 years or 18 years he was in the playoffs? I think it was 12 of 18.
Yeah.
And his worst record was what, like eight wins or something like that. Or 7 wins, something like that. But he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach, and one of the reasons is because despite the 18-year period and losing coach after coach because they went on to become coordinators or head coaches someplace else, he was able to bring in somebody else to adequately fill that person. He knows what he's doing when he hires coaches. Has he been perfect? No, but this is one of the things he's good at. So some people in Giants land are like, well, I can't trust the Giants to do anything because they haven't been able to hire the right people in the last 14 years. Well, it's not the Giants that are hiring these people. It's John Harbaugh. That's why John Harbaugh is such a big deal. John Harbaugh is not the mess that have been hiring these people in the last 14 years. That's why he's a game changer here. So you're going to hear people say, trust John Harbaugh. Some people are going to say, I can't trust him. Well, then why do you want him as your head coach? Because that's why he's here. He's good at this. Let him cook. Anyway, sorry for my rant.
No, that's exactly. I think one of the biggest problems, everybody wants instantaneous gratification, right? The problem is there is no gratification right now. Everything right now is in preparation for what will be the 2026 season. So there's quite a bit of time between now and then. between now and then is the job that he does that none of us, myself, you, anybody else, anybody who covers the team, none of us have any real concept of what they are actually doing behind the scenes, why they brought certain people together, why they feel that that's going to work. That's what they're supposed to do. All you can do is go with the assumption that this is the reason we hired this guy, was so that he would put his people together. The problem a lot of people have, though, is his people, they assume, are just the people that were with him in Baltimore. And if any of them went somewhere else, something is wrong. But keep in mind, there are people in Baltimore that went on to something else. Monken went on to something else. So some of those people that were tightly connected to Monken, they worked for Harbaugh, but Monken was the offensive coordinator. So some of those offensive guys are like, okay, this is our system, I'm going to go with him. Versus go with Harbaugh, who will bring in a new offensive coach, and that might not mesh. Harbaugh's bringing in, here's my offensive coordinator, here's my offensive line coach, here's my assistant O-line coach, here's the tight ends coach, all this stuff. And let's not forget, let's add in Greg Roman, right? Greg Roman has been added to this staff. Right. Another guy who was an offensive coordinator. And what is he most known for? The running game. A guy who could put together a really good running game. We now have a head coach or an offensive coordinator with head coach experience that is more designed around the passing game. We have a former offensive coordinator who's basically going to be a run game coordinator, senior offensive assistant, but we know he's going to put the run game together. That's quite a staff compared to what we had seen under Daboll, Judge. You know, Judge pulls in a Jason Garrett, and Mark Colombo was the offensive line coach early on. These are guys that were just kind of pulled together. They clearly didn't mesh. We went through offensive line coaches, you know, kind of like people just go through socks each day. It was like, well, let's just get a new one. So this is different. But you got to give it time to prove itself.
Well, it's, again, you either trust John Harbaugh or you don't. And if you don't trust him, then why did you want him as head coach? I mean, John Harbaugh is not an offensive whiz kid. He's not a defensive whiz kid. He was a special teams coach who is a CEO. He's a culture builder. He's a game changer in terms of the culture and just putting a program together. And that's what he's doing. And so you either trust him or you don't. If you don't trust him, then you wanted Stefanski or somebody else to come in here. So again, I think a lot of this is silly. I think a lot of it still goes back to, it's almost like the draft. When the Giants or some other team takes a player that they wasn't on their radar, it's a bad pick. But it's a great pick if it's somebody that they were talking about. And the same thing kind of with the coach, the coaches. It's like, I still convinced that because Nagy wasn't being even discussed by fans at all, it blindsided them. And probably the same thing will happen with the offensive line coach. No one was blinded. The people were tying the Syracuse coach who, what is his name? I can't think of his name, but the guy who was with the Eagles for a long time. He's now the Syracuse. He signed with Syracuse. Someone's going to help me out in chat here, but he's with Syracuse. But I was wondering, is he going to leave Syracuse? Because it's almost like not Lane Kiffin, Weiss Jr. He already signed with the new school, and it'd be kind of bad if you sort of backed out of your commitment.
Juan Castillo.
That's it. Thank you. So that was a smart. People were connecting the dots there, but either he said he wasn't leaving Syracuse, or John Harbaugh interviewed the new offensive line coach and said, I like this guy. And as somebody brought up, I think it was Art Stapleton, who's blocked us. Somebody brought it up. Harbaugh coached against the offensive line in Cleveland twice last year. So he knows the guy he's coaching against. So we'll see. The big question mark everyone has is, would have been better to keep Brasillo, and did they lose him because they were counting on Warhop coming over with Monken? And Warhop was a guy that, again, a lot of fans didn't want until he was gone, and then they wanted him. You know what I mean? It's kind of that thing. I don't want Warhop. Look at his lines, and the Ravens weren't very good. The Ravens fans didn't want him. Then it's like, oh my God, we lost Warhop. So it's that thing. Now, to go back to what you said, we had talked, I think when we lost Monken, I posted on BPI that the next pivot for a potential offensive coordinator was going to be Greg Roman. And that got a lot of groans from people on the website. But I looked at the connection with the Harbaugh. Both Harbaughs, Jim and John, had relationships with Greg Roman as offensive coordinator. And I thought that was an obvious, at least, interview. And it has come out since that Greg Roman did interview with the Giants. Obviously, Nagy interviewed with the Giants. Neither one of those interviews were reported by anyone in the media, by the way. Again, they're closing up. They're getting rid of the leaks because nobody reported.
Right.
Even Mike Garafolo and these guys. None of these guys said, oh, the Giants are interviewing these guys. And they interviewed both for offensive coordinator. It has since come out, obviously, because they hired one as offensive coordinator, and the other one, it came out that they interviewed Greg Roman. So after they hired Nagy, you and I were on here when was our show? Monday? When did we? Tuesday. Tuesday. And I had mentioned to you that Art Stapleton had mentioned that Greg Roman would make a lot of sense as a run game coordinator. I said the same thing. Gary came on, and Gary said the same thing without even knowing that you and I had mentioned it, and that Art had mentioned it. So the Greg Roman thing seemed fairly obvious, and I was kind of rooting for it all week. And when it happened, I was like, yay. So it makes a lot of sense. Greg Roman, you might not like him as an offensive coordinator, but in the criticism for people who don't know was really good at running game. He's not so great at the passing game. Greg Roman.
Right.
Nagy, it's kind of the reverse. He was really instrumental. By the way, I saw another interview, and this keeps coming up and it keeps getting asked on BBI. Where's the evidence that Patrick Mahomes loved Nagy? There was an interview on Valentine's show. What is it? Ed Valentine's show is I can't remember the name of it. His podcast. He's got a podcast. He had a KC beat writer on there who went on and on about how much Patrick Mahomes loves Nagy. What a great relationship they had.
Big blue view. Big
blue view. So that was a good interview. For people who haven't seen it, Patty Traina had a really good interview with a Kansas City sports writer. And it's Ed Valentine, right? Ed?
Yes.
Ed Valentine had a really good interview with a different Kansas City sports writer. And Patrick Mahomes loves Nagy. And the guy went on and on about what a great relationship they had and how he always talks about Nagy. And you would mention, as you talked about last week, Nagy liked him so much he gave him the answers to the 30 visit.
Right ahead of time. Yeah.
So
they changed the conditions of the test.
Yes. So they've got a passing guy and they've got a run game guy. And if you look at the offensive side of the ball, I was looking at sort of like a holistic view. They've got a lot of guys on the offensive side that have been head coaches at some level, assistant head coaches at some level, and coordinators at some level, even though they're position coaches on the Giants. So there's a lot of experience on the offensive side of the football with the Giants. Now, if you go down through the position coaches, there are guys that have been head coaching experience. So it's a really, really experienced offensive staff there's not a lot of first timers here this is new to them, like a first time so-and-so coach, first time wide receivers coach. There's not a lot of that stuff. And the reverse is true. They've actually coached at a higher level. So it's a very, very experienced staff. And on the reverse side of it, which I'm sure we'll get into, the defensive staff is very young. They're all in their 30s or early 40s, but a lot of them are like young 30s even. This is a really young defensive coaching staff. So I think it's interesting. One side is like really experienced, but the other side is like really young. I think that's interesting.
You could look at it if you want to project ahead. You could say, okay, wait, we got this older staff coming in, a little bit more experienced staff on the offensive side of the ball.
Right.
Because you've got a rookie, first year quarterback now in Jackson Dart. You're going to have a first year running back coming off injury in Cam Scatterbo. Neighbors is still pretty darn young. The rest, but you could say, okay, wait, we've got a pretty experienced staff. Are the Giants leaning towards maybe in free agency in this offseason going a little more vets on the offensive side, and we're going a little younger on defense, and we want some younger people to be able to relate to the guys that we're bringing in? I wouldn't be surprised if Giants go very heavy draft-wise on the defensive side of the ball. Just throwing it out there. We want people that can relate to the players.
I don't know if the ages have anything to do with the player acquisition plans or not. I just think it's interesting. And I don't want to give people the impression that the offensive coaches are old. They're not old. They're older, but they're still like in their 40s. So it's not like we're not like hiring a bunch of 60-year-old guys. It's like so if those who haven't seen it on Big Blue Interactive, there is a page of the coach. It's called New York Giants coaching staff, and I've put the bios of these guys as bullet points, where they've been and their ages, and if they were a player at the college level, the pro level, whatever. But the birth dates are there, and it's just interesting to go look and see how old the guys are. And it's, when I see some of these ages, I really feel really old. When people are starting to be born like in the 80s and stuff, and I'm like, holy crap, anyways, this I'm not supposed to be getting old, John. That's what's happening here. But I just think it's interesting that there's more experience on offense, but not old. They're not old, but there's just more experience. It's kind of interesting. A lot of the guys that we have on offense, they had pretty impressive positions at a young age, and so as they've aged, now they're in their 40s. They're still not like old men. They're still relatively young. Now, some people out there will say, "Well, 40 is old." I don't. I'm sorry, that's not old.
No, probably not. Probably not watching us is saying that, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but and then the other thing we should talk about before I want to talk more about the coaches, but they also hired some Kevin Abrams replacement, which was interesting too.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that, but I wanted to finish real quick because they did bring in a defensive back, assistant defensive back coach.
Addison? Is it Addison? I think. Let me bring it up. I've got that right.
Yeah. So we are at this point, before we switch to the front office side, are we missing any other coaching pieces that we're still looking for?
Yes, and an important one. So we have, all right, so everyone knows the Giants have not announced any coaching hires other than John Harbaugh. No one's official, and we don't really know what anybody's official title is. So, for instance, we heard very early on they were going to bring back Tim Kelly, and then they were going to bring back Charlie Bullen. I'm operating out of the assumption that Tim Kelly is still the tight ends coach and Charlie Bullen is still the outside linebackers coach. But we don't know that for sure. They were retained, but we don't know for sure what their titles are actually going to be. And the Giants also kept another coach that now is their wide receivers coach. I think it was Hall.
Yes, Chad Hall.
Chad Hall. So big picture, none of these are official. That's why I'm trying to put this out there. So Naggie is our offensive coordinator. Greg Roman's going to probably be like we've been told his title is going to be senior offensive assistant, but as John has said, it's probably going to be more like a run game coordinator. So he's going to be sort of like a step down, I think, from Greg Roman. But then Willie Taggart was the running back. We're assuming is the running back. All these are assumptions. Willie Taggart's the running backs coach. Chad Hall, who the Giants kept, who had been the assistant quarterbacks coach, is now the wide receivers coach. And he was a wide receiver in the NFL, by the way. He'd been with the Eagles, the 49ers, the Chiefs, the Jaguars, sort of as a journeyman wide receiver. Tim Kelly, I'm assuming, is the tight ends coach. And then, of course, Bloomgren, we just found out, was the offensive line coach. And interestingly, as you had brought up last show, Grant Newsome is the assistant offensive line coach, who was hired before the offensive line coach. At least that's what we think based on the timeline that these leaks are coming out. Who's missing on the offensive side is a biggie. It's quarterbacks coach. So we don't know who the quarterbacks coach, unless one of these other coaches that they've hired is also going to coach quarterbacks, which I doubt. So the quarterbacks coach is missing. On the defensive side, we've got our defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. We got our defensive line coaches, both Dennis Johnson, who's the main guy, and Matt Robinson, who's the assistant defensive line coach. We're assuming Charlie Bullen is the outside linebackers coach. It looks like we have both our defensive backs coach, Donald I hope I'm pronouncing this right, D'Alessio. I hope I'm getting it right. And then Addison Lynch, who we learned that they hired yesterday, as probably the cornerbacks coach.
I think it's D'Alessio.
Yeah, okay.
D'Alessio.
As everyone knows, I'm terrible with names. All right. So who's missing is, now they brought over Matt Pease, who was a assistant linebackers coach with the Ravens. I'm assuming he's going to have the same role here. but I don't know. They could have given him the promotion to inside linebackers coach, but it looks like we're still missing an inside linebackers coach. And other people have pointed this out, like Anak on the site. I think Antonio Pierce is still out there. It would be kind of cool if Antonio Pierce, but would Antonio Pierce want to be a position coach? I don't know. But it would be kind of neat to have Antonio Pierce come in here as like the inside linebackers coach, but that's just probably a pipe dream at this point. But I think they're still missing an inside linebackers coach.
Yeah, they do. AI does list Pease as the assistant linebackers coach. Again, it only pulls probably from the position before being hired. So,
and AI is pulling stuff from BBI, which is kind of funny too. I've noticed that too. So,
you're a source.
So it might be a circle jerk at this point here. You know,
it's a term I wasn't expecting to be used on a Saturday morning.
No, it's too early. Anyways, so I think we have to wait and see with the who's coaching what. But it's mostly the staff is mostly together. If the leaks are accurate, we just don't know exactly what. I'll have to. I'm sure when they release the official thing, I've got to go back and clean up the titles. The titles will vary. So Biggie is quarterback coach, and I think they're still missing an inside linebacker. And I have to believe it's a little odd that the defensive staff isn't together. We're hearing leaks, so maybe everyone's been hired. We just don't have the leaks yet. I mean, they may be done, but we just don't know who it is.
Yeah, it was all pure speculation on my part, but I have a feeling they knew who their offensive line coach was going to be, which is why you were able to hire the assistant offensive line coach. You obviously want somebody who's going to work with the other guy, and the other guy wants to be okay with who he's working with in a position group, right? A head coach who's a CEO doesn't just hire all these individual guys that he knows and he's happy with. They got to work with the lieutenants that he's putting in place. You got to have those folks that are going to work together closely. O-line and assistant O-line, they're a unit. The offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach and those other pieces, they're a unit. The head coach is the guy who makes sure all that stuff works together. And that's what we finally got with this team. So I'm kind of hoping that's the way it was. We'll see some of those other positions.
Right. And Stephen Kaufman brings up a good point. Like T. Martin was let go, and it was a surprising let go by the Ravens. He would have been an obvious choice if Monken came here. So the question now is, again, because it's Naggie, who does Naggie want as his quarterback coach? And Harbaugh obviously is going to have a say in this. So the whole Monken thing threw everything off because the Ravens staff was basically on the offensive side, I think was basically supposed to be imported to the Giants. So once that didn't go through, he pulled a bunch of those coaches with him. And I don't know if T. Martin, I don't know if Cleveland picked their quarterback coach or not. So I don't know if there's a vacancy with the Browns with quarterback coaches. If there is, T. Martin very well could end up with the Browns as well, and we don't know if Naggie wants him. I do want to finish up on Naggie too, and people are going to say I have a soft spot for Naggie. I don't care about Naggie one way or the other the fact that he's the New York Giants offensive coordinator, and I want him to succeed now. I have no vested interest in him. I find the reaction to his hiring so over the top, and I saw Hasselbeck was on. Had the same reaction to me. He even did the same thing as me when he put his hands up on his head and going, where is this coming from? This isn't that outrageous a hire. I don't understand the reaction to it. John Harbaugh and Andy Reid are good friends. There is no way Naggie was hired without without Andy Reid's full endorsement and support.
Right.
And saying you should hire this guy.
Right.
And so other people have been out there going, well, Andy Reid's only saying nice things about him because that's what coaches do when they let go of people. And that's what Patrick Mahomes is doing too. All right, then but John Harbaugh talks to Andy Reid. You don't think they don't have an honest discussion between them? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And again, I've made this point repeatedly. There is no great gap between Naggie and anybody else that was available out there. There was nobody out there that was, and it's pretty obvious that Kingsbury was waiting on the Giants because he just got hired yesterday. He was waiting on the Giants. So he was waiting on Harbaugh to make the decision, and Harbaugh passed on him. So he interviewed both guys. Kingsbury was basically fired by the Commanders after 2 seasons. He wore out his welcome there, which is really odd, which is one of the reasons why I was a little nervous about Kingsbury. I was like, why would the Commanders get rid of him so quickly? That made me nervous. And that's why I said maybe it'd be better if Tim Kelly would remain the offensive coordinator at that point. And then I didn't have Naggie on my radar either. But again, John Harbaugh, I trust him. He interviewed him. Nobody knew he interviewed him. And he said, and he talked to Andy Reid, and I'm sure Andy Reid said, hire the man. He knows what the hell he's doing. That's what drives me nuts is people are saying, well, Andy Reid got rid of him. No, he didn't get rid of him in Kansas. That's not how it went down. And by the way,
Right.
Only a few people are reporting. All the Kansas City guys, including the one that was on Ed Valentine's show, corrected the record again. He said before the 2025 season, Naggie told Andy Reid, I'm out of here. And the reason I'm out of here is I need to blaze my own trail someplace else. And that was what Mike Garafolo said. And that's what other Kansas City beat reporters have said, is that before the season even started, Nagy told Reid he was out of it. That's why Bieniemy's back in Kansas City now and was hired so quickly, because he knew he wasn't coming back. If Andy Reid had his druthers, Nagy would still be the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. That's not coming from me. That's coming from the people that cover the Chiefs.
Right. And let's be honest too. I mean, too many people wrap things up in perception, right? Whatever the common perception is elsewhere, it becomes groupthink. Oh, okay, that's what it is. He had a 34-31 record as a head coach with not the greatest of rosters at that time. The Bears were notoriously cheap and were kind of poorly run, but we would have taken 34-31 over a 4-year stretch over the last few years of what we've dealt with. Let's see what he can do. Overall, again, I'm trusting Harbaugh. I'm not going to change my mind when I'm pounding the table, go get Harbaugh, and then you get him, and then he's like, oh, he picks these guys. Oh, that's not the guy I wanted. But I don't know the difference between Naggie and somebody else behind the scenes. I could say I've seen some of the things on the field. So Kingsbury, and to answer the question, Stephen, he went to the Rams, I believe. He signed on with the Rams.
It was what Chargers or the Rams? Well, Rams, I think.
I think it's the Rams. He wears out his welcome very quickly.
Yes, he does. That's the exact phrase I use. He wears out his welcome, which makes me nervous. Sorry, John.
No, you're fine. And Washington, by the way, too. Everybody was like, just screaming to the heavens. No, oh, look at what they've done. Look how great that they put together. Look at the staff. They got their quarterback, blah, blah, blah. Look at it right now. 1 year later, they play that entire season now. You have a head coach. Almost the entire coaching staff has been redone. They're not happy with a bunch of the players that are on the team. That team is somewhat in turmoil and dismay right at the moment. So sometimes don't just jump on the name. It's kind of like, what was the movie with Eddie Murphy, Distinguished Gentleman, when he tries to get elected into office and because he has a name of somebody else who used to be in office, and he just said, go with the name you know. That's what a lot of people do. They go, oh, I know that name. That's got to be good. Okay, you don't know anything else associated with. Let's give Harbaugh a chance to put his staff together. Let's give Nagy a chance to do his thing with a Jackson Dart, a guy who's already shown that he's got immense talent and his potential is through the roof. Whether he can achieve it will rely on who we bring in for offense and quarterbacks coach.
Who I'm upset more so than Giants fans are the pundits that are being paid to talk on television who haven't done their homework at all. If you're getting paid a check by ESPN or the NFL Network, you should know what the fuck you're talking about before you open your mouth. And so when you got this guy like Spears, Marcus Spears, open his goddamn mouth on television and everybody's picking up on it, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Kingsbury was the one who was fired. He was let go by the Commanders. Naggie was not fired, but he's got it backwards. It's the other way around. The Commanders, Quinn did not want Kingsbury back. Andy Reid wanted to keep Naggie, but this moron is telling everybody the opposite. And everyone believes him. And
Right.
Mike Florio's doing the same damn thing.
Wow, they just
and these people, and I sit there and I'm like, man, I run a website from my basement. I'm in my basement right now. I'm like that stereotype. I'm nobody, but I know this. Do your fucking job and report the news. And if you're on the air, you have a responsibility to do your homework before you open your mouth and you say things. And all they had to do was do a quick search. We live in such a lazy society now that all they have to do is punch it into AI. They don't even really have to like actually do any hard work. They can just say, why was Matt Nagy let go in Kansas City, and the story will come up. And but they're so lazy they won't even do that. So that's what's driving me nuts, because they open their mouths and everybody else reacts to it. And like you said, it's groupthink at that point. And everybody says, "Oh, it must be so because Marcus Spears said it and Mike Florio said it." And somebody, and then other people, like you got Phil Simms out there going, wait, this is a good hire. I don't know what they're talking about. Hasselbeck's out there going, wait, this is a good hire. What are they talking about? So you notice the people that actually played quarterback in the league are supporting this move, and people that don't are like, like Mike Florials of the world are like, what's going on here? So anyway, sorry.
It's what's interesting is that obviously we know it's not about reporting. It's not. It's about generating. It's generating interest. It's generating heat. A lot of sports talk has become the equivalent of pro wrestling, right? The idea of pro wrestling is what? I either want you cheering or I want you booing. The only thing I don't want you is to be quiet. If you're quiet, we're not doing our job. So these guys to generate getting something, and by the way, it's the same even with posting videos. I'll run thumbnail ideas through AI. It'll come back and give me all these things that I should do that will get clicks and stuff. But a lot of them are like with this statement, right? Giants are going to do this, and it's a bold. And I'm like, but that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're doing. But that's just designed to get clicks. And you see other people do it. I'm not going to name who they are, but there is a guy that's all his videos are that kind of shit. It's just literally like, this is why it's going to fail. Boom, boom, boom. And then you watch it and you're like,
Jackson Dart beats dogs.
Yeah. I'm like, you totally suck at this. It's just, you're just making videos to make, and great. Good for you. Congratulations. You're making money off it. I want our content to be good. ESPN is no longer sports anyway. It is all about just riling people up. Marcus Spears' answer is really kind of stupid, because if you think about it, the Chiefs went, and who did they bring back now to be the offensive coordinator?
Bieniemy.
Eric Bieniemy, who was let go really by the Chiefs. He was up for jobs elsewhere, and he didn't get any of the head coaching jobs, and the Chiefs didn't bring him back as the offensive coordinator at that time because they moved on from him. Now they bring him back, and all of a sudden it's like this is huge thing, and they got Bieniemy back, and that's great. By the way,
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Nobody hired him as a head coach, and it wasn't because of racism, as someone tried to throw out there. Eric Bieniemy has a history in his past that kind of worries some teams about him being the head coach. If you don't know,
some personal issues.
Yeah, you can look it up. It's in the past. But the Chiefs also moved on from him as offensive coordinator too. They weren't exactly going, God, we got to get him back. So people just say stuff to rile the fan bases up and to get them going. But you're right. That comment by Spears just sounds dumb. And by the way, you were a defensive player.
So I didn't name him by name last show because I didn't know who the hell he was. I remember him now. I remember the name. I remember him playing. But remember when I came on, I said there was some panel and they were bringing. He was the guy I was talking about. So when somebody posted, it was Canton posted on BBI about his comments. I'm like, oh my God, here he's posting the morons comments. So it drives me nuts that they didn't do their homework. So the Bieniemy thing is perfect because I don't think Bieniemy would be back. Bieniemy's back because Harbaugh couldn't retain Nagy, and I think Reed couldn't keep Nagy, and that's why Bieniemy's back. But they were reporting it the other way around. So, and they don't have their facts straight. And at the very least, they should say they should look into it and find out. The one thing we do know is this: we know this because it's been reported by multiple people, including Mike Garafolo, and Andy Reid said it in an interview too, that Nagy said they came to agreement that he was going to leave Kansas City, and this was before the season ended. It was either right before the season or right at the beginning of the season. And he said he wasn't coming back, and that's why they had to fill that spot. He wasn't fired. Kingsbury was fired, but anyways, the other thing, John, I do have to comment. You were saying about clickbait. You do realize that we've put on like girls on the.
Yeah, but I get that, but we don't. But what I'm saying, you're right. What I'm saying is that you don't make bold statements just to make.
I know what
you know what I mean.
I'm just
going to do it. But you're right.
And
I absolutely do.
Sports videos. If you noticed, AI is all over YouTube now, and they even have the most outrageous things just to get you to click on there. You know, like they want you to click on the thing, and like I saw one today. It said, "What's that great movie? Shawshank Redemption." There was a thumbnail that said Andy was guilty. You know, I'm like, what? You know, but they want you to click on that to see,
right.
Wait a minute, why do you think Andy Dufresne was guilty in Shawshank Redemption? You know, it's that kind of thing. So anyway, there's our other movie reference.
Nice.
Should we keep with the coaches, or do you want to move on to Dawn
Aponte? I believe it's Aponte. Let's move on. That's a big deal because Dawn was with the NFL, was working in NFL offices. She would be the one that would come on. I think it's day 2 or 3, and she announces all the draft picks at that point. So she, people have seen her a number of times, but she is replacing the Kevin Abrams role.
She has the exact same title as Kevin Abrams. It was Senior Vice President of Football Operations and Strategy. And I thought when it was first reported, they didn't put in the and strategy. And then one of the beat reporters also put in strategy. Again, we're going to have to see the official announcement. I checked Giants.com the other day or yesterday, and they still haven't updated. Kevin Abrams is missing, but they haven't updated any of this. So they haven't officially announced that we're being told by reporters. Exact same title. If you look at her bio, she started off for many years as an accountant, I believe, with the New York Jets. I think it was the Jets that she started off with, and she was an accountant for a long time. And then she started getting these more flamboyant titles, these impressive sounding titles about football operations or director of football administration. The big thing here is she was with Joe Schoen for a number of years in Miami, which could suggest that Joe Schoen still has a lot more influence than you and I had been talking about, or it simply may be a coincidence. But we need to point out that she was in Miami with Joe Schoen for a number of years, so their paths did cross. So my initial reaction was, is this a Joe Schoen move or is this a John Harbaugh move? And on the surface, it suggests that it might be more of a Joe Schoen move, but I don't know that. Again, it's just a connection. It could be a coincidence, but I think if we're going to be fair, we have to mention the fact that Joe Schoen and her work together.
I mean, it certainly could be an attractor, right? But isn't that position above Joe Schoen?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, let's be honest. I don't care what the Giants publicly say. Joe Schoen's been neutered, and we know that. I
think that, but if we're going to be fair, we should bring up the fact that she did work with him. So I don't know. I'm going to be fair here.
True, that's true. But she worked with him, and I think if you look at the totality of her career, she's worked with a ton of people. It just coincidentally was with Miami, but her connection with the NFL, John Harbaugh, I believe, is part of the competition committee. He had a ton of contact with John Mara. He's definitely had a ton of contact with the NFL head offices. I've got to assume that she's pretty well known. Now, you go back, you mentioned some things. She started as an accountant. Her next thing was salary cap analyst and pro personnel assistant. She's also then been manager of football administration, but then she was vice president of labor finance for the NFL. So I think where you're going to see a big deal with her is the way the Giants manipulate the cap, which they've been.
Correct.
Gary Meyer said that Kevin Abrams was good at his job, and I'm not knocking Gary's assessment there. I think Kevin Abrams was good at his job with the abilities that he had. I don't think
what does that mean, John?
I'm getting to it. I think in a You know when somebody's really
I'm a
good?
great NFL quarterback with the abilities I have.
Perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. You actually put it right where I want to.
I can't throw the ball, John.
You can take a guy. Let's use, while you're making fun of what I'm saying, let's use Brock Purdy as an example.
I'm not making fun of you.
No,
I know what you're doing. It's a lawyer trick.
But in that situation, right, Brock Purdy's a good quarterback for the 49ers, and with what he had, he can do what he does. Their system is like that. I think Kevin Abrams, with the idea of what he's used to in finance, was able to do certain things, and it worked on a season-to-season sort of thing, and they could manipulate and get what they could. But the Giants were never healthy long-term. They did not manipulate the cap the way that teams like Dallas does. Look at Dallas. They'll roll into an offseason being $35 million over the cap, and by the time free agency rolls around, they're able to sign like 4 guys. You're like, how the hell did that happen? The Eagles, they sign huge contracts to guys. They've got some big-name, big-time players. They have a ton of cap space year after year. How is that possible? They do things with the cap differently. They have a different concept on how to do the numbers. Doesn't mean that the other guy was bad. He just doesn't know how to do this. I think she does. I think she's going to know how to manipulate the cap in a way.
Better than that, John. I didn't think of any of this until you opened your mouth. Again, I wasn't making fun of you. I know what you were doing.
That's a funny way of saying that.
I'm making fun of the argument. I mean, I'm not making fun of you.
Not you. No, it's not you.
But as you were talking, I thought, all right, let's assume, and it's a big assumption, but let's assume she's one of the people in her role with the, and when you have her bio right in front of you, she was with the NFL, not the first one when she was with labor, but she was with the NFL 6 years, last 6 years, 7,
9, 2017, 226.
Okay. What if she was one of the people reviewing the salary cap situations and contracts for all 32 teams to see if what they were doing was on the up and up? So in other words, remember, when a team does something, it has to go through the league offices to make sure that it's, I don't know if legal is the right word, but
if it's what they've set up, yes.
Yeah. If that's true, and I'm guessing that's one of the roles she had, but it's just a guess, then she knows all the tricks.
Oh, sure.
She knows what all 32 teams are doing.
Absolutely.
So if she does that, then that's a tremendous asset for the New York Giants because she knows what all 32 teams have done for the last 9 years. So she can say, you know what? We could do this. This is something that the Raiders, or let's not use the Raiders, are a bad example. This is something the Eagles have done, and you guys really should be doing it. You know, it could be like that. So
and let's also do right. It's one thing to know what other teams are doing. It's also to then know how to do it. And her background in finance itself is also going to help because what did we say? One of the big problems with the Giants isn't necessarily the money that they spend on these big contracts, right? It was the week-to-week shit that would happen that it looks so mom and pop, nickel and dime-ish. We couldn't figure out why. And I think some of that was cash flow during the season. Now you've got somebody who's got a much better financial grasp of things, I think is going to really help in a number of areas. Again, we are projecting based on what she's done.
Yeah.
And she is a league heavyweight. She's not just somebody. She was a face of the league as far as, especially with wanting to include women into positions of power in the NFL. She was up there. I mean, she is at the top of the list when it comes to that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I think her experience with the league could really help the Giants. And I know you've been really focused on this nickel and dime issue for a long time, and you're right. But I'm still looking at the big contracts and thinking, you know, how do the Eagles and these other teams have so much cap room every year? And we seem to be up against the cap every year, even with a rookie quarterback. And I'm thinking they're doing something. Other teams are doing something we're not doing, and she should be able to do that as long as the Giants don't have a cash flow problem. And that's what you and I have wondered before. Do the Maras have a cash flow problem? But then, of course, you have the Tishes, and now you have the Koch family.
Yeah.
And do they have where is their cash going to? So we'll see. It's an important change. I do agree with you that I think Gary, again, sometimes I think sports reporters can't say things they might want to say. and maybe this is one of them. I don't know. But I don't think there's any evidence that Kevin Abrams was a genius at his job. He was doing it a long time. He was, I don't know. No one was. I don't ever remember covering the Giants thinking, my God, we have a really good cap situation. I don't.
Even in our best years cap wise, we're always like 16, 17, 18. We're like, oh, good. Look at all the cap space we have. Wait, why are we even in the bottom third? Like,
right. And it's always like we have to restructure somebody to get under the cap. Always. And then some teams have $100 million in cap space. How does that happen? I don't understand. But anyways, I think Optimus used to do the cap stuff for us, so he'll probably know this stuff better than anyone. Was there any other hiring that we should talk about on the defensive side too, or any other issue that happened this week? Megan, I just want to harp on, and I know I keep repeating myself. Let Harbaugh cook, and I just feel so. It's not blind faith. I hope people aren't coming, but it's competency. And I think Giants fans have been so used to not having anyone competent that they don't have any faith that things will be done well. You should have faith in John Harbaugh, not to be perfect. Again, the odds are because of the way the NFL stacked, he won't win another Super Bowl. But he gives us the best chance in my mind of any of the coaches that were out there to win another Super Bowl. And because he has a track record at this, and he brings an immediate. I mean, I hope everybody saw Jackson Dart's interviews yesterday. Not all of them, because he was all over the place. But I don't know if you saw this, John. Did you see his comments on John Harbaugh? I mean, he's just.
Yeah, I did. The bounty one was a little hard to watch with him and Cam Scatterboo. That whole beginning was just like, oh dear God. But yeah, yes, I did see that.
My wife's reaction to Cam Scatterboo was, God, he's a troll. He does look like a troll, but I love the guy. I mean, he's there eating his wings. He's like, they're interviewing him.
She was like, he's awesome. It just is great.
He does not look like a football
He's like
player.
He's like a smaller version of Rob Gronkowski. He's just more compact Rob Gronkowski. I don't know.
If he was a troll and had lost like 2 feet or whatever. I don't know.
Well, again, I said smaller, but I meant attitude and just, what I mean? You can picture him. You can picture him doing some of the stuff that Gronkowski does. Yeah. But
anyway. Again, my kids love him. I think he's going to be like this icon for younger football fans. They just seem to gravitate towards him.
And one thing to say about him too, as far as playing wise, he seems to be recovering pretty darn well with that ankle injury. He played in a celebrity, I think it was a Arizona State softball game. He's
golf. I think he was playing golf.
Yeah. He's talked about that. He's feeling like he's going to be good to go. I'm pretty confident there. And then there was some talk about Malik Neighbors. We want to address that stuff. The other thing you mentioned, is there anything else we want to talk about? I'm only going to say this because I don't want to really have the discussion. I just find it interesting how quiet everything got after Goodell made his comments about, we're league's looking into everything. Nobody's guilty of anything yet. We're looking into it, and we'll take a look at, and then nothing. And nobody on the beat side seems to really be pushing the issue with Tisch. I got a weird feeling that your comments on this before is probably he's gonna get away with it. He's gonna stay in the background and it's gonna stay quiet.
The only one I saw today was Nick Filato tweeted out, and good for you, Nick, saying this is still out there. And I haven't looked. I don't look at this stuff. I guess there's a lot on Tisch in those records. It's not like 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, there was more. Yeah, there's
a lot. And he was reposting some of the additional stuff that's in there. I mean, he was asking for, again, I don't have it right in front of me. There's something about him offering Epstein tickets, I think, to a Giants game in the owner's booth or something like that. It's not good, John. I mean, again, this is all This is all when he was known for, when, it's out there who he was. And I do want to correct the record on something for those who might not have seen it. I talked to my dad. It wasn't the late 80s. My dad told me that he told me this. It was the late 90s. I was off a decade. But again, the whole Epstein thing was there from the early 90s,
for quite a while,
early 2000s. He said Little St. James, he bought the island like around 2000. He said, you're off a decade when I told you that. So I wanted to correct the record. But again, this stuff has been out there and it was well known down in the Virgin by the FBI, by the Department of Interior, by local law enforcement. They all knew about this. They all covered it up. Anybody in a position of power knew about Epstein, and they knew about, and so this argument about we know now, no, they knew that, and the emails to suggest that they were talking about girls. So again, they want this. My opinion is people in positions of power tend to get away with this shit, and I have a feeling they're just trying to let this go away, and people will forget about it and not talk about it anymore. But again, from now on, in my mind, when I hear that name Tish, I think Epstein. I mean, that's me, and I hope everybody else does. At least Steve Tish. I mean, because it's not good.
It's there's so much in all of that stuff that what is all completely real, what isn't real. I don't really care about that at the moment. What I do care about is the part here that people need to remember is Tish has already admitted that this conversation happened and tried to lessen it by saying it was, we were talking about somebody who was overage, was not a kid. And I'm like, wait a second. And then you talked about other stuff. Again, I'm not going to Jeffrey Dahmer for advice on what to have for dinner.
Exactly.
Unless you've got the same interests, you're probably not talking to that guy. So it's just sickening. Overall,
it doesn't even pass the smell test, Jen. You're going to a sex trafficker for investment advice. Get out of here with that. Shut the hell up. I mean, give me a break. Philanthropy. Anyway. You're going to somebody who sells children for information on philanthropy.
Well,
fuck you. Fuck off. I don't know if you ever watched Critical Drinker. He always says "fuck off" movie.
Just not too many. Movie. Okay, but I think there is a limit to what we can get away with.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Try
to
keep them.
I'll say fish off movie.
Fish off. But the other part about it too, though, is let's not confuse being over 18 and under 18 as being the only way that you could be doing something against your will.
Yeah.
If you're trafficking in people, they don't have to be underage to still be doing stuff that they don't want to be doing. So let's not make it, he really tried to blow it off like that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's all right.
Oh, and so have fans. Yeah, have fans, which is sickening. Stop that. I mean, all right, the girl was 23. Who cares?
Right. Kidnapped, drugged, but still 23. I'm just 23. Right.
Check your moral compass, people. Anyways, all right.
Yeah. So let's
God.
So switching gears real quick, there was something since we were talking about the cap and stuff, and we've been going back and forth. I wanted to just look at it real quick. You and I have talked off and on, not talk, but we've exchanged messages on inside of BBI. And I've definitely done this with other people on BBI. One of the big things that people love to bring up is dead money on the cap, right? They're always like, oh, you're going to have all this dead money. And I've always argued that doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? It's cap space, period. So here's an example, though, of why dead cap space doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants are roughly 24th, 25th in cap space right now in 26. Do you know of the space that they have? They only have, and this is with the new cap amount, the Giants are only $6 million over, but we know that in reality, they're going to have to get rid of some stuff to make some room to sign.
Wait, are you saying we're already over?
No. I mean, I'm sorry, $6 million under, but they're going to have to maneuver.
That's not great either.
No, but let me finish. But do you know how much dead money they have?
It's a lot.
No, it is not.
It isn't?
It is not. $216,000 in dead cap money. That's it.
That can't be right.
I'm looking at it on over the cap right now.
Didn't we get rid of some
216,000.
people that then? I mean, even isn't it part of Daniel Jones's contract still dead money?
I thought we ate the last of his dead
Maybe
money
we
last
did.
year.
Maybe we did. Okay. I mean, you're looking at it. I would have thought we'd still had a lot of dead money. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, no. So, but that's what I'm saying, right? Yet we only have 216,000, and we're still 23rd or 24th. Dead cap space means nothing. It's whatever space you have means something. Dead only means the amount of money you're spending on something that you don't actually have anymore. That's all that means. But cap space is cap space, and the Giants still don't have a lot, and they have very, very little dead money on there.
$6 million in cap space.
That's it.
What site are you looking at?
Over the cap.
Oh, they're good. They know what they're doing. All right.
The next one below us is the Browns. They have 3. Now you get into the negative space. The Packers, the Texans, the Bears, the Saints, the Bills, the Lions, the Jags, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Vikings, and the Chiefs are all way over the cap. The Chiefs are 54 million over the cap. The Vikings are 40 million over the cap. The Cowboys are almost 30 million over the cap.
Yeah, Optimus, didn't you used to write articles for BBI on the cap stat? I think you did like 10 years ago. I think that was you. I think you used to write art. You have to tell me. But anyways.
Well, he did say I need to restart my X account or cap blog again.
Yeah, that's why I posted that up. I think he used to write articles. Like there was like a year that he was like doing updates on the cap.
And he said yes. Yes, he did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, good job. Maybe we need to do that. Maybe we need to do that.
So
I mean, again, I get it. I know we have big contracts, and a lot of this was, again, the Giants spent a ton of money last offseason. It didn't pan out, given our record. It's hard to believe that we have so little cap space and we have a rookie quarterback. It just shows you how poorly managed this team has been. Anyways.
What pisses me off is the 6th most expensive salary we have this year, Darius Slayton.
Yeah.
Darius Slayton.
Look,
I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
When we did our free agent preview and we went through all the positions and we looked who was out there, when we got the wide receiver, you and I were like, oh my God, there's not much out there. There was like Stephon Diggs and who we mentioned, but there was issue because he was coming off an injury. And this was before he had his own sort of boat issue, didn't he?
Well, that was during the season.
Yeah. What I'm saying is we didn't know about that then, but the wide receiver market was awful, and that's when I said, you know what, I might consider bringing back Slayton, but I didn't want to bring him back on that contract. I couldn't believe it when that contract came out. It was oh my goodness. I mean, why? He is who he is, and if anything, he got engaged this year, didn't he? Didn't he get married? I believe he got married.
I believe he got engaged. I believe he did the whole proposal thing. I saw. Yes.
Yeah, and he seemed even more distracted by real life because his hands were even worse. I mean, he body caught everything. You're gonna go someplace with that.
Well, I expected him to drop the ring on the proposal.
Yeah.
So. Sorry.
There are certain players. Again, there are certain players that they got the most of what they could get out of their abilities. It's like what you were saying earlier. When you said when you were making the joke about me being the quarterback. Slayton is who he is. You can't get any more out of him. He's not going to change. He's not going to change. And I'm not sure I want that on the New York Giants anymore. So I don't know if they can eat that contract. That probably cost them. I think you told me before, if they cut him, it's actually going to hurt the Giants cap wise. But I'm not sure I want Slayton on the team.
It looks like it's been adjusted slightly since the last time I looked at it. He would gain, if we were to release him, we would gain $161,000 if we to release him.
And you can still designate people June 1st cuts.
June 1st,
you don't cut them after June 1st. I think you can designate them even when you. I think they changed it that you don't actually have to cut them on June 1st. I think you can designate them that.
But all that does is you designate them that. It means that's what frees up the dollars on the cap, but you don't get it free until June 1st. that player can be free at that point in time, but you don't see the savings of what
Right.
they bring to that until June 1st.
Right. I'm just saying that you still have an option if you really want to play with the accounting on it.
If they do that, it would save us $3 million. I suspect the Giants are probably just going to eat and just take the 161,000. But again, it depends on what they get, right? Like it's
right.
Right now the Giants receiving core is pretty thin, and Neighbors is injured. So
Right.
and Wandell has not been signed. I'm really getting tired of people just saying, "Oh, looks like Wandell's definitely come back." How the hell do you know that?
No, we don't know that. And the other thing I'm really curious about in big picture, and you and I will talk about this on another episode, is John Harbaugh has come out and said the Giants can compete now.
Yes.
They can compete in the NFC East. We're not afraid of the NFC East. We can compete for a playoff spot now. But I think if we're being objective, there are parts of this roster that are not John Harbaugh type guys. Carl Banks was on with who was he on with? I can't remember who he was on with. He was on the whoever Paul Schwartz does that New York Post thing. Remember, was it Brandon London, the wide receiver who has his
he has his own. Yeah, he has his own.
He was on with Brandon London, I believe. And he said, which I had said earlier, he said, change is coming and it's going to be painful to some people in that locker room. And he said some people are not going to accept it, and some people it's going to take them a month or so to understand it. But he said, and I firmly believe this as being someone who's watched a lot of football and has seen people like Tom Coughlin and Bill Parcells come in when they crack the whip a little bit. The Giant players right now probably are thrilled John Harbaugh is there, but they don't really understand what that fully means yet. And it's going to get uncomfortable. And this is what Carl Banks was saying. It's going to get uncomfortable. He kept saying the word uncomfortable, and it should get uncomfortable because this team has gotten too used to losing.
Sure.
I think Carl actually said they don't know how to win. This team doesn't know how to win. And you can't just come in there and be everything, just say, I'm the new head coach and they're going to win. That there's going to be a whole new accountability, a whole new way of doing things. It's going to be not pleasant. And some people are not going to be able to handle it. Some people are going to go. Now, Carl Banks was going on and on how he still believes in Deontay Banks, and Deontay Banks is fine. He might be right. I don't think so, but he might be right. But I'm just saying, I know there are players that you and I think that are going to have a problem, and Deontay Banks is one of those players that you and I think are going to have a problem. Jalen Hyatt's going to have a problem. Jalen Hyatt's not going to be on this team. If Jalen Hyatt's on this team, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if Jalen Hyatt's on this team. But there are going to be guys on this team that actually might be good players who were like, what is John Harbaugh doing? Why did he just cut this guy? And it might be because that player didn't buy into what the message was.
So, Carl Banks, love you. Big fan. One of the best linebackers ever in Giants history. Greatest postseason defensive performance I've ever seen in the 86 postseason. The 49ers game, the game with the Redskins, the Super Bowl with the Broncos. You were the most dominant player on the field defensively, and it's not even in question for that run. You were the most dominant player. I don't know what the hell you're basing your opinion on, other than you used to play in the league and that you share the same last name as him with no relation. Deontay Banks has proven and shown everything you can't coach. I can't coach a heart. I can't coach a want to. He doesn't seem to follow any particular scheme of what they want him to do. He does whatever he wants to do. I don't know where you get this opinion that he can be a good defensive player. Show me where he's proven that. He's got a number of years that says he is a pansy on the football field.
Pansy.
If he were to go into Broadway, he could get his next career would be starring in The Wizard of Oz as the Tin Man, looking for his goddamn heart. The dude does not try. We saw it so many times, and it literally it is subtraction by addition. And yes, I am saying it the way I want to. The second he comes on the field, you lost an additional player. He does nothing, and I don't know why they keep trying to push this narrative. Other than being a kick returner, He has done absolutely nothing in this league that makes me. I would rather have Elvis Patterson out there cornerback than Deonte Banks.
Well, we have a defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson, who is known for his defensive back work. That's his background. He is, and that's why he got promoted to defensive coordinator, and it's why some coaches have said he's going to be a head coach someday. Denard Wilson. We have a actual defensive back coach now. You said his name is, how do you say it? Delasario?
Well, somebody else put it in here. They pronounce it a little bit differently. I thought it was Delasario, but just go with whoever it is.
But he has been referenced as somebody who has a head coaching future too. So if they can't reach him, nobody's going to reach him, and I don't think anyone's going to reach him anyways. I'm like you now. How do you can't coach Hart? But all right, my point on this was this. I went off on a tangent. Does John Harbaugh is going to have big parts of this roster are going to have to be fixed. Okay, it doesn't mean they can't compete, but there are holes on this roster. There's depth issues, and there are holes on this roster that have to be addressed. You and I have talked about there could be a huge chunk of this offensive line that has to be swapped out. I've seen people say when discussing the Giants and what John Harbaugh is going to do, well, at least he doesn't have to worry about the offensive line. Well, yeah, they do, because Jermaine Illuminor is a free agent. I think it's 50-50 if he comes back. Greg Van Rolten is going to be 36. And do you want him really starting? I don't. I think you want him as a swing guy. People are still wondering if Linderbaum would come here and replace Schmitz. That's an open question mark too. You're probably going to keep Runyon one more year, but you might not. But they could be in a situation where 3 offensive linemen are gone, or at least 2. And then you've mentioned wide receiver. We've got the whole thing at inside linebacker. You could make the argument that we need to blow up the entire inside linebacker room. The wide receivers, you got Neighbors. Wan'Dale's a free agent. I mean, so there's areas in this team where you're like, there's a lot of holes still to be plugged in. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see is how does John Harbaugh bring in his guys, get rid of the guys that won't buy into his program, but at the same time keep enough in place to be competitive without blowing everything up. To me, that's the big challenge for 2026 is going to be how does he start to transition without like being a rebuild. And he's insisted this is not going to be a rebuild.
Something to consider. And it's the same as the discussion we had about Monken going to Cleveland, right? That the Giants wanted Monken, but he goes to Cleveland. And thus some of the coaches kind of follow him to Cleveland. That also means that when it comes to free agency, Cleveland's going to be in play. But what also is in play is Brian Daboll is the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Somebody like a Jermaine Illuminor, even if we now want to bring him back, if we're offering him X amount, it's quite possible that they want to bring him to Tennessee, that Daboll wants him there. Yes. Wan'Dale Robinson could be in play in Tennessee for Daboll, somebody he knows and he trusts and he believes knows his system. We don't know, but I'm just saying it's not as simple as it was before. Now, the other thing
before you get off that, look at Tennessee's cap space number.
And they have a ton. They have a ton.
Gigantic. So Wan'Dale could be a Titan. You know, Illuminor could be a Titan. So it's huge. They have a ton of cap space.
And the other spot to look at is if the Giants, and I'm just throwing it out, spitballing. There's a couple things and I said one of these before. So this is not new. So if I say it now and someone's like, oh, I saw that the other day. I said it a few weeks ago. 1, watch for Calais Campbell to the Giants. I think Harbaugh is going to want to bring in some guys that are going as that part where it's going to hurt a little bit. You need veterans that are going to carry your message in that locker room. I think a Calais Campbell, I think they will try to get Linderbaum, but Cleveland's going to be in play there. So you got to watch that. I think Patrick Ricard's another one. They will try to bring him in because that's a guy that can bring their message, a physicality, a big guy, whatever. I think you're going to see some of that. And at the same time, if the Giants want to make a move for Linderbaum, I check with Tennessee and see what they'd be willing to give me for John Michael Schmitz. because obviously you can't have two
Right.
expensive centers who only play center.
Right. Well, the
Just
other
can't.
thing too is now remember Moton and his Baltimore offensive mates went to Browns.
Right.
Nagy came here. Denard Wilson came here. So maybe we should start looking at Chiefs and Titans who might be coming in, might come here too.
Sure.
So Nagy might want to bring in some Chiefs. Denard Wilson might want to bring in some Titans. So we maybe we're too hyper focused on Baltimore Ravens right now too. So
Absolutely.
Again, when you look at the other coaches that are coming in from other teams, the Browns offensive line wasn't good last year, but maybe we should be looking at a offensive lineman from the Cleveland Browns that would come in here too. It's that kind of thing, because now we have the offensive line coach from the Cleveland Browns. It's that kind of thing now. If Monken had come in with his guys, we would be more exclusively looking at Ravens. I think now we should. It's getting back to normal. We should start looking at everybody right now. So that doesn't mean we just ignore the Ravens, but
right.
Don't ignore him. Harbaugh still is the head coach, and he still has connections to all those players. I'm just saying the options have expanded right now. I'd be very interested. I haven't done it yet. I'd be very interested to look and see what Kansas City Chiefs are free agents right now.
Yeah, there's more of the veteran receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton, who was a Patriots cast-off and then went to the Chiefs. Those guys are all free agents. Robert Tonyan, I believe, was their fourth tight end. He was a former Packer, blew out his knee a couple of years ago. He's there. So these are guys they could bring. I don't think there's going to be a bunch of signings that people are going to go, I can't believe we did that. And they're not going to be sexy signings per se. These are going to be build the locker room as much as it is on the field. This is going to be stabilizing messages, getting things across that they need. And veterans, go back to the Parcells days, right? I mean, when we played in the 90 season, if you remember correctly, I know a lot of people do, Giants had three tight ends that they used. Mark Bavaro playing on one knee, Howard Cross, and Bob Morosco. Nobody was going, oh my God, we got Bob Morosco. But that dude played a role, and it was a big role for that team.
I don't know why, but Bob Morosco was one of my favorite players, but he didn't really I think he had like one touchdown catch or something.
It was in the playoffs. It was against the Bears.
I like Bob Morosco. Yeah, people are going to say I'm harping on this, but it's just popping into my mind. Again, the Kansas City Chief sports reporters that were interviewed by Patty Traina and Ed Valentine were very interesting because they brought up things that you and I have talked about, but they brought up the specifics about how badly injured the Kansas City Chiefs were at wide receiver and on the offensive line, and how that impacted everything on, we're talking about Xavier, how Xavier Worthy was supposed to be this huge factor for them, and him getting hurt was an issue. Who's the other receiver there that got hurt? I can't think of his name.
Rashid Rice was suspended for the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it was Rashid Rice. And he mentioned Rashid Rice, that threw a wrench in everything. And I think it was the one with Ed Valentine. Again, both interviews were really good. He said something that I brought up. He said it's funny with Chiefs fans, Andy Reid can do no wrong. And so anything that went right, Andy Reid got the credit for, and everything that went wrong over the years, Bieniemy, Naggie, and he mentioned another coach. I can't think of the other offensive coordinator or offensive coach he mentioned, but he said anything that went wrong, he said, so Andy Reid was untouchable in terms of criticism.
Sure.
But so if something went wrong, it was always the other guy. And I am thinking, well, that's what the Giant fans are doing right now too. It's the same. And he was laughing at it because he says it doesn't work that way. And he was talking about what Nagy did for Andy Reid. And one of the reporters was saying Andy actually let him call plays at times over the years. So he did have some experience with Kansas City when calling plays, even though technically, officially they say that they didn't do that. They never announced it, he said, but it was Andy does. He said Andy would do that. He would let his coordinators from time to time call plays.
So real quick, some names, Travis Kelce if we want to try to woo him and Taylor Swift.
I don't want his baggage, his
his
picky poo.
But he is a free agent.
That would cause me to question my Giants fandom at that point, because I do not want to see Taylor Swift every other play.
Marquise Hollywood Brown, Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, if the Giants wanted to bring in a physical running back, Juju Smith-Schuster, and then that's kind of it for their offense. And again, I mentioned already Robert Tonyan is a possible free agent for them. So Tyquan Thornton, again, he's a young guy with speed, but he failed in New England, went to Kansas City. He had a couple of big plays early on. I'm going to have to go back and look, but I think one of them was actually against the Ravens. And then he kind of disappeared the rest of the season. So it'll be interesting to see where they go and what they do. But I do think some people are going to be a little surprised. I think a message will be sent. If I'm John Harbaugh, I send a message and I pick one guy from the team that is, he might still have a lot of value to the team, but I want to send a message because what Carl Banks said is true. They don't know how to win, but I don't believe that that's the biggest problem. The Giants' biggest problem isn't that they don't know how to win. It's that losing has become almost acceptable and expected. That's
I think they go together. Winning. I think he was saying the same thing. I just think it's a matter of semantics. I know what you're saying.
It is, but it isn't. I do agree. Closing out games is I don't know how to win.
And he talked about that. They talked about that.
But when you start losing and you do lose, and if you've been there a couple of years of losing, it's almost like, hey, this is what it is. It's just like, yeah, we clock in. That's the guy you got to get rid of. The guy who's been there through losing. And it won't be Dexter Lawrence, but I would not be shocked if they did find a way to trade. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau saves the Giants the most money if they can trade him. If they can trade him, they free up $14 million on the cap.
Right. What was the point I was just going to make with? Oh, the other thing too that kind of ties in with that and should not be underestimated is the coaching staff of the New York Giants right now has coaches on here that know what it's like to be in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. Matt Nagy knows what it's like to be in AFC championship games, get to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. John Harbaugh knows what it's like to be in the biggest of football games and win a Super Bowl. So there are people on this coaching staff now that know what that looks like, knows what that locker room needs to be like. And what John's getting at is there might be people on this team that are so used to losing that they're almost infected with a virus of losing. And sometimes you have to get rid of those people, and that's unpleasant. But sometimes you have to. Bill Parcells cleaned house because the Giants had a drug problem, but he also had a roster full of people that had just become used to losing. So between 83 and 84, half that roster got swapped out.
Yes.
And so they weren't all like rookies. A lot of them were first and second year players, but some of them were players that came in from other teams that had a better track record of winning. And some of them weren't good players. That's the other thing is we're going to sign free agents that people are going to be like, why are we signing this guy? He stinks, or he's not a starter. I don't understand. Why are they signing him? Some of the people that are going to be brought in are going to be just locker room guys. They're just going to be and
carry the message. Yes.
And John and I are old enough to have seen this happen before, where you bring these guys in, and the more famous ones are the ones that people remember, like the Everson Walls and the Steve Diassis, who were Cowboys. You know, they were hated Cowboys, but Parcells brought them in later. This was later. This was like the 1990 season. But there were players that I can remember when the Giants brought in Kenny Hill.
Absolutely. I loved Kenny Hill.
He was a dirty player. He's Yale. He played at Yale too, right? Wasn't he a Yaley? I think he was.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but they brought in they brought in like Raiders, and they brought in
they brought in Pete Shaw, who was also another safety there.
Yeah.
Yep,
they bring in these guys, and Pete Shaw wasn't very good, but again, they bring in those guys, and they're just sometimes they bring them in because of their personality, and I expect to see that in March, and just be prepared for it. Some of the guys they bring in, you're going to be like, I don't get it. Well, think about the personality that they're bringing in, then it may make sense.
I mean, and even if you go back to the 89-90 team that you're talking about, so they brought in Everson Walls. They also had brought in Johnny Cooks, Lawrence McGrew. These were guys that they were all well on the downside of their careers. They were well on their down, but they were veterans. They guys that would toe the line and keep other people in line as well, that they could count on. And I think that's what you're going to see here. I think there will be a Raven or two for sure that's going to come in.
I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
Calais Campbell isn't with the Ravens anymore. I think he's with either the Cardinals or the Dolphins that he had just played with. But he's a guy, even though he's 37 years old, he's a huge dude. You can bring him in. He would be that guy on the defensive line he could get the plays in that he can. He would be a guy that's going to bring the message. He's that elder statesman. And that's what the Giants need. Some of their best players, I don't believe, are leaders. I don't think Dexter Lawrence is a leader. I think Dexter Lawrence is one of those guys. He's the fun guy. He's the guy that other guys like to be around. I think he can be he makes his play stand out, but I don't see him rallying the troops kind of deal. Or he's a guy who's going to step in and be like, this is what needs to happen. A Calais Campbell kind of guy is. Right. So look for somebody like that they will bring in to carry that message.
Carl Banks actually brought up what you just said. He said he didn't think that Dexter Lawrence had fun last year. He wasn't playing with a smile and that the losing wore on him. And that's like you're saying, that's not a leader type thing. Again, it's not me putting down Dexter Lawrence. It's just like what you were saying. He's not an enforcer. He's not a guy who's going to say, grab somebody by the face mask and say, get your head straight, get back in the game. We got to make a stop here. He's not that guy. He's more jovial, happy. When things are going well, Dexter's very vocal and happy. When things are going poorly, like last year, maybe that contributed to it. Optimus, my favorite things. A lot of guys on here aren't going to like this because they're going to say that's dirty. Well, Kenny Hill played the Redskins in a game back in like 85. And when he's going off the field, the Redskins and the Giants hated each other. They hate. I know this
absolutely.
Because when I was in college, they played a charity basketball game at my university, the Redskins and the Giants, and they were almost had to be separated on the basketball court. It was a charity game, and you could just tell they hated each other. They were almost coming to blows on the field. Well, Kenny Hill was going off the field after a kickoff return. And as he's going off the field, the Redskins are walking back to their sidelines. The Giants are walking back to their sidelines. And as Kenny Hill's walking off the sidelines, he just hits a couple of Redskins right in the face as they're walking. It's like bam, bam, bam. And he got thrown out of the game because he had done it once too many times. They actually threw him out of the game. And Lawrence Taylor was on special teams in that game. And they went after Kenny Hill. The Redskins did. And Lawrence went to defend him. I've never seen a guy fly so far in my life. You can probably still find this on YouTube someplace. LT hit one of the Redskins. The play was over. It was over. He was protecting Kenny Hill, and he just kind of put a shoulder in him, and the Redskin went flying. And this is a grown man. That's how powerful Lawrence Taylor was. Anyways, but Kenny Hill was such a dirty football player, but I loved him because he was a Giant. But if he had been like the Eagles or the Commanders, I would have been like, get that guy out of there. He's so dirty. But Kenny Hill was dirty. He was a dirty football player.
Though that bad angle on that pass play in week 2 against the 49ers in 1988, knocking Mark Collins off the play and letting Rice go all the way for the touchdown.
Yeah, but it was like when Joe Montana got hit by Jim Burt. Remember how he went flying? It was kind of like, whoa, he just went flying like that. And all the Redskins backed off of LT. They were like, all right, we don't want anything to do with this guy.
I hadn't thought of like a charity thing in a long time until you just mentioned it, but I saw the Giants charity basketball team in Stowe, Vermont. God, I want to say it was in 91. So it would have been in the offseason after the Super Bowl, I believe, but don't quote me on that. It could have been the year before. But I saw, and it was Stephen Baker, which I couldn't believe how unbelievably small he was.
He's tiny. He was tiny. Yeah.
Otis Anderson was there. I met John Washington, talked to him for a little while. He's a big dude. But yeah, just remembering back to those days.
I don't know if they do that anymore, but they used to do basketball games. And they used to do them in weird spots. They'd come all the way up to upstate New York, and they would be like doing it like in these little tiny college towns up there. And I always kind of wondered if the players just thought that was the worst thing to do, or they thought that was funny. But in the middle of the winter, or not, it'd be like when I say middle of the winter, it'd be like February. It'd be like, but up in upstate New York, February is horrible.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it'd be like doing these charity basketball games at like Colgate, and it'd be like, why? Anyways, but it was as a teenager, it was cool because I got to see the Giants then. So
to at 56, the Giants already have a O-line coach. We actually covered that.
Hired him this morning. They hired the Cleveland Browns offensive line coach. Go to the front page of BBI and you can find his bio. So there's a link to his bio.
There you go.
No.
No.
The people are coming late. No,
not Juan Castillo.
No, it's
Mike Bloomgren. So it's like Holmgren, but Bloomgren.
Yeah, Bloomgren. Right. His background basically was 1 year as the offensive line coach in Cleveland. He was there for a bunch of years as a head coach at Rice, and he was a bunch of years at Stanford as their offensive line coach and offensive coordinator, and also associate head coach. But he was with the Jets for a while. He's a disciple of Callahan. Callahan was there with the Jets. He was there when Callahan was there. So he's got that background as an offensive line coach. People are going to be upset because he wasn't on anybody's radar. So they're going to say, who the hell is this guy? It's going to be the same thing with Naggie. Naggie wasn't on anybody's radar. So they're going to, and we'll have to find out. We'll have to find out if he was a better choice than Brasillo. Now, I did listen to an interview this morning with him when he was with the Browns. It was 7-month-old interview. It was done before the season. And it doesn't mean anything, but he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He sounds like a good guy. He sounds like there are certain coaches, when I hear them, I'm like, I'm not inspired by them. He sounded like a guy that guys would play for. And he said he had a conversation with like Joe Thomas of, legendary offensive lineman, and how well that went at one point. He just sounded like an offensive line coach. That doesn't mean anything, but there are coaches the Giants have hired, and I've heard them speak, and I've been like I never got Mike Kafka. I'll be honest with you. When I heard Mike Kafka speak, I think he's probably a very, very, very bright guy, but I always thought this guy doesn't sound like a coach to me. And maybe he'll go on and do great things, but like it's when John pointed this out, when they did the NFL Films thing, the behind the scenes, he started dropping the F-bomb. It just didn't seem natural to me. It
seemed forced. Have you ever seen the show Broadchurch? Have you seen the show? No. Okay. If anybody's seen the show Broadchurch, Kafka reminds me of Nigel in that one, and that's not a good thing. I
know that's a dumb way to look at coaches, but sometimes I just look it's just kind of try to picture them.
It's impression.
Their presence. Do they have a presence about them?
Cleveland's, just so we put that out there, Cleveland's free agents to keep an eye on. Wyatt Teller, the guard. Ethan Posick, the center. Joel Patino, guard. Offensive tackle Jack Conklin. Offensive tackle Cam Robinson. So essentially, the bulk of their O-line folks are all free agents. Now, they weren't a good unit, and some of it was injury. But if you are trying to bring people over who know what you're going to be doing and how you want it done, we do want to consider that some of the Browns offensive line free agents may be a target for them. And Harbaugh would also know these guys as well. They played the Browns 2 times a year, since 2008. He's been a coach there. He's going to have a good feeling of who they want. Now, somebody else that's not offensive line related to keep an eye on, don't be too shocked if David Njoku get some attention from the Giants to bring in a veteran tight end who brings receiving and blocking skills.
Now, I would assume our new offensive line coach was hired by the Browns last January, which he would mean he was part of the evaluation process for Hudson, who is now currently a Giant, and is our $12 million backup who got benched after was it week 2 or week 3?
It was week 2. It was in week 2 when he was having his meltdown. I was there.
After his 4 penalty, 1 sack, meltdown, and 1 drive. Wasn't it 4 penalties on 1 drive?
Oh my God, he was going, and then he went ape shit on the sidelines. I was there. I saw it. It was not good.
So he was probably part of the evaluation process for Hudson. So he knows what he has in Hudson. So that'll be interesting to see. Some of these things are going to be interesting to see once the league year starts. Are we going to see immediate cuts? I'm not talking about the free agents. I'm just going to say, are going to be people that John Harbaugh has seen on film and said, no, I don't want this guy on my football team.
I think word will leak out. Well, the Giants will probably decide pretty early on. I don't know what, I think they have to do it. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody else knows. I think they have to do it by the start of the league year. But if they're actually, no, I'm going to rephrase that. I think they have until May to decide, but the Giants are going to have to decide, are they picking up 5th-year options? So like Deontay Banks, which I've got to assume it is not happening. They're not doing that. Those are going to things to watch for. Is the combine is what, a couple of weeks away from now is the combine.
Yeah, it's coming up.
A lot of deals start to happen at the combine.
So a lot
you're going to hear some stuff coming out when teams, now sometimes it happens at the Senior Bowl, but I think a lot of coaches weren't there because a lot of staffs were still being assembled across the league. That's really kind of pushed a bunch of teams off. The Giants are one of them. Just filling assistants. Guys are waiting because an entire staff,
right.
Like Arizona just picked their coach. The Raiders just picked their coach. So there's a lot of stuff, but I think the combine, you're going to start hearing stuff. The Giants can restructure guys. They can do new deals with guys. It won't become official until later, but they could certainly get some things done now that says we're going to free some cap space up going into next year. I think Dexter Lawrence is probably the guy that they'll play with his contract, and they probably give him a new one and extend him if Harbaugh wants to keep him. So there's a lot, but I think in the next couple of weeks, the focus now becomes Giants assessing their own team, the Giants assessing players that may be available in free agency.
Correct. And again, John Harbaugh was on with Gary Myers, and he talked about all of this. He talked about the combine. He talked about started the process for evaluating free agents. And he was honest. He said, there is a team of people in the Giants that are doing that. Now, maybe he's trying again to try to say he's not running everything, or maybe he's being honest, but he was basically saying he was providing the message that a lot of this is being delegated to people that have begun this process of analyzing the free agents. So if you listen to the interview, you came away with the impression that it's business as usual with Joe Shane and his team in evaluating free agents, and that Harbaugh's involved, but that's kind of being done by those guys. Now, whether that's true or not, and John's just saying that, I don't know. But that process has already begun. He told Gary Myers, we've already started that process of evaluating not just our free agents, but other teams' free agents. And then he talked about the combine. He talked about all these other things. But he said at the time, the most important things were getting the coaching staff complete. And he told Gary Myers that two of my most important hires are going to be offensive line coach and quarterback coach. This was a week ago. This was before some of the other coaches have since been hired. This was before Naggie had been hired, and this was before Greg Roman had been hired. He said to Gary, my offensive line coach and my quarterback coach are going to be two of my most important hires. And he was saying that while he was talking about the offensive coordinator position. So he knows that the offensive line coach is a big deal. And the other coach we don't have right now is quarterback coach. So that's the last big one. I do think they need I think they need another linebacker coach, unless they're giving it that Mike Pease, unless they're giving it to him. I think inside linebacker is still out there. And that's why I threw out Antonio Pierce, and other people have said that. I think that's a pipe dream, but as far as I know, Antonio Pierce hasn't been hired.
I don't believe so. I haven't seen anything that way. So yeah, that'll be the focus. I think, unless we've got something else major right now, I kind of feel like,
everybody who's tuning in. Yeah. The Giants have hired an offensive line coach. We talked about it earlier in this. So if you want to find out, go to Big Blue Interactive. It's on the front page. There's a link to his bio, but we have a new offensive line coach. That was not announced. It was reported this morning. Sorry, John. Sorry.
No, you're fine. No. That's I see a lot of the questions on it. I mean, I think right now, for us, and I don't, I'll pose it to the chat. We obviously try to do stuff during the week, and we may do things as things break. We might do a little bit more. We might do a little bit less on certain weeks, and we then tend to do the Saturday one all the time. And this one I think we will always do live because I think it's fun with the questions. But what do people want us to focus on? I mean, I think we could start focusing on players, the current team, the players that may be available in free agency, take a look across the league. And at some point in the very near future, we're going to start turning our attention to the draft.
Yeah.
But I think free agency is going to be a big deal. I think it's actually going to be, even though we have less space, I think space is going to be created. I think this year's free agency is going to be far more important than in the past. And I think it's also going to be very telling on which direction we go in free agency, on what we might be leaning towards in the early portion of the draft. If the Giants if the Giants go heavy on one side, I think they've decided that the draft is going to be heavy on the other side in the first couple of rounds.
That tends to be the case anyways. I know everyone's going to want us to have Cy on soon. We should have Cy come on.
We're working on it. Larry, this schedule's been tough.
Larry has been, in a pleasant way, bugging me, and I think he's correct, about you and I having a fun discussion on some historical aspect of the team. Something even maybe more recent, but just having maybe a fun discussion on, it doesn't even have to be like a certain season, like the 2007 season or anything, but just sort of like fun memories of like Giant things, historical things. And you and I have talked about that. I think it'd be fun to talk, like every now and then you and I bring up, like we did today, we were talking about Kenny Hill. It'd be fun just to bring up, like, I don't know, badass Giants, or, like there was a thread today or this week that was great on, what was it? It was like your worst memories. I think worst Giant memories, like the most traumatic.
Most heartbreaking, like whatever. Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many.
There was a great question. What was your favorite Giants NFC championship game? So we could have, like, it doesn't even have to be season focused. It could be like fun things, like, and people in chat, like, what's a good subject, like, to talk about historically about, anything with the Giants. It doesn't have to be anything famous. It could be something stupid. It could be something fun, something.
Yeah, I've always thought about, like, and I think that's great. I think we can mix it in, like, well, a favorite game of yours that wasn't really about winning a championship. You know what I mean? Because there are some games, like, there's I'm trying to think, like, probably the 85 season opener. We beat the Eagles like 21-0. I watched that and rewatched that and over and over and over again, because I would record the games and then watch them again. My parents thought I was insane, because by Friday I had already watched the game probably 3 or 4 times. But I like to study how things were, and I don't know. It was just,
and it doesn't even have to be that old. I mean, we can get into Jim Fossil years. We can get into Tom Coughlin years. It could be something even, like, I mean, there are games in the 2007 season that were, if you go back and look back at the 2007 season, and the same thing with 2011.
Sure.
There were so many touch and go games that don't really get talked about. And if Giants didn't win those games, like there was that crazy ass game in Chicago that no one ever talks about.
Oh yeah.
And that was, if the Giants don't win some of these games, like when they went in it was the Lions. And again, there were a lot of games that were like, they barely won. And if they don't win that game, they may not even get in the playoffs, and they don't win the Super Bowl. It's just things like that, like you said, so it could be like seasons where they didn't win, but they were favorite games, but they could also be games in Super Bowl years that no one ever talks about. And of course, there's been games that you and I have talked about before, like the Phil Simms Kansas City Chiefs game in '84, where he had his big comeback. Everybody loves talking about that. Remember that game. But we, on the flip side, we can talk about the disasters, like the 1997 playoff game against the Vikings, where Chris Callaway can't field the onside kick, and we're all You were all like, oh my God. We all knew we were going to lose the game as soon as that happened. It was like, oh shit, what were you doing during the 49er game and
I think
game,
one of the, and I'll save the bulk of it for another time, but one of the most heartbreaking, and I'm positive it's 88. I think it's 88. The Giants have a chance they're playing the Eagles. Was it overtime at this point? I think it was overtime.
You're talking about where they blocked the field goal?
LT blocks the field goal.
Yeah.
Clyde Simmons gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage and returns it for a touchdown.
Yeah, we blocked a field goal and they scored on it. Yeah.
I've to this day, and I think the 83 game against Philadelphia when Sims came off the bench and he's rallying the Giants and he just destroys his thumb was just so like, know. It's so, but yeah, there's so many things that we could do. The Deshaun Jackson one. You know what's really funny about the Deshaun Jackson one? If you go back, there are multiple times during that kind of this stretch of time. I want to say it was the 2000s into the early 20s, early 2010s. The Giants have lost games to the Eagles, giving up a late punt return multiple times.
5-second hammer.
Was it Brian Mitchell? Was one? He returned it. I just couldn't believe. I remember
the guy who punched punching.
He punched the pad on the goal.
I can't swear anymore. You said I hit my limit.
We did have a lot. We had a lot earlier. So I think
this is the thing. The Optimists, they went through a span of the weirdest ways to lose to the Eagles, and it was Parcells' teams too. It wasn't and they were really good Giants teams, but we went through these weird, like there was a touchdown where the ball bounced off somebody and landed in the Eagles' hands. It was just this awful.
Well, Carl Banks has Randall Cunningham dead to sights, drills him in the legs. Somehow Cunningham goes up, comes down, puts one hand down, lands on his feet, stands up, throws a touchdown to Jimmy Giles. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, come on.
And then last thing I'll say, because I know everyone's going, I don't want to hear all this stuff, but there was, I used to watch the Giants games in DC before people could do NFL ticket and all this stuff. It was the game where Strahan in overtime intercepts the Eagles and runs it into the end zone.
Yeah, I think Ty Detmer was the quarterback.
What year was that? 90? I don't remember what year
that had to be
98. I don't remember when that was.
It might have. Was it not the 97?
I don't think that was the 97 season. That was I think it was after that. I think it was like the year or two. Anyway, that I was in a bar where there was an obnoxious Eagles fan. It was mostly Giants fan, but there was this obnoxious Eagles fan, and we'd come back in that game. I think we were like down like 17-3, and we'd come back and tied it. And when that play happened, that fan just stormed out of the bar. He was like, he was just like that. We were like, of course, we didn't care. We were all like, yeah. We couldn't believe we had won that game. But I think we were like way down in that game and then won. And Strahan intercepted the ball. It was like Too Tall Jones back in 80. Was it 85? They'd done the same thing to us, but it was
but that was Too Tall deflecting the pass to Jim Jeffcoat, who returned it for a touchdown. Yeah, that was so.
Oh yeah, and of course Neil brings up this one. That's a whole other. That's still one of my favorite. I will only watch that fourth quarter. That's the only part of that game I'll watch.
You were right in 1999.
Yeah, because the only reason I know that is we started watching those games at that bar in '97, which was a magical year until the Viking game. The Giants were expected to finish dead last that year, and that was another year that I think we started. The opener was against the Eagles, and Sam Garnes returned an interception at the end of the game for like a 90-yard touchdown at the seal that game. So the weird thing is Faso owned the Eagles. Parcells had problems with the Eagles, but Faso owned the Eagles. That was the weird thing. And Tom Coughlin had problems with the Eagles for a while too. So,
but Buddy Ryan was a major thorn in Parcells' craw a lot. I mean, he just constantly. We got him early on. Like 86 doesn't count because we got everybody. But as you started to move forward, 88, 89, we constantly struggled with them.
And that was the weird stuff that Optimus was talking about. It was all those weird, like 88, 89.
And even 90. Right?
Even 90 wasn't pretty. I mean, we had that bad loss in Philadelphia with where you were talking about Carl Banks, I think, caught a touchdown pass on a field goal.
And I'm trying to remember, in the 90 season, we lost to the Eagles, and then we turned around and lost to the 49ers. So we lost that game back to back, those two teams.
Right.
It was kind of tough to see that. I think we won one, then we lost to Buffalo the week after that. Then we finished with 2 wins with Hostetler being the quarterback. But yeah, it was the Eagles were always a problem back and have been ever since, right? Like they are constantly a problem.
And I hate to bring this up, but Bavaro finished his career as a Philadelphia Eagle and caught a touchdown pass against the Giants in a game the Giants came back and won on was it Dave Brown? It was Dave Brown, and the Giants were going to lose that game. And it was, remember when Dave Brown, it was the season the Giants had won a few games at the beginning of the year, then went on to like the 7-game losing streak. And then they won a bunch of games at the end of the year.
That's 94.
And we all thought because Dave Brown and the Giants had finished the year strong, that the following year was going to be a good year. And that's when the opener started with the 35-0 Dallas game that we got blown out. That Jerry Jones was on this, he's promoting it, whatever product.
Yeah, because we were retiring LT's. I think it was LT's. Sims came out and threw a pass to. Yeah, because Sims came out and threw a pass to him. And LT had comments to this day that he was drunk. Was it LT or was it Sims?
It was one of the two. It was Sims or LT.
And LT caught the pass. Either way, but LT was drunk, and he kept telling himself, "Whatever you do, don't drop this."
I think it was Sims's retirement.
It was Sims's retirement. And LT caught the pass.
Yeah. Yes. The game I'm talking about in Philly was it was actually a cool comeback by the Giants. They beat the Eagles, but Bavaro scored a touchdown as an Eagle against the Giants in that game. And he hates the Eagles. Have you ever seen the Mark Bavaro interview by NFL Films by Steve Sable? It's a must watch. It's probably the best interview I've seen of a player ever. I mean that. Of any NFL player ever, Steve Sable's interview of Mark Bavaro is probably, in my mind, the most interesting one I've ever seen. And he admits he used to want to walk over to the sidelines and punch Buddy Ryan. He hated the Eagles that much. And Mark Bavaro interview with Steve Sable it's on YouTube. If you guys have never seen it, go watch it. It's amazing. All right, and then we're going up on 2 hours.
We've got past, so we're gonna keep it tight.
Yes, sure we are.
So that said, like, subscribe. Really do appreciate the likes and stuff. That's where the subscription. We're over 1,700 subscribers. So I really appreciate that. We're going to keep growing. We're going to be getting into the player stuff here pretty soon. We'll let you know ahead of time. We'll try when we really lock things in on when we're going to do stuff. There won't be a Saturday one next week. I will be away, so we'll try to I'll have to get one done early in the week if we're going to get one in, or it might be a quiet week.
Are you saying you can't do one when you're on vacation with your wife? You can't. She'll have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's Valentine's too, dude. Yeah, she'll have a problem with it. So, but that being said, I know, right? That being said, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we're going to catch you again real soon.
Get your Inside BBI merch here.
Thank you.